Hello everyone, welcome to Yesports. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I'm your host Samuel, the recipient of the Yesports Esports Apprenticeship, as well as a student from APRU. Today is the third session of the Yesports and APRU Esports Career Webinar Series. We are very glad to have Kamilla and Eamon here with us to talk about esports player contracts, marketing strategies in esports. Eamon is a student leader during his college days and has founded his passion for gaming and esports during the time of the pandemic. He is a content creator and a leader of his very own esports organization that handles esports athletes, streamers, and casters to hashtag lead the charge, not only in the Philippines, Filipino local scene, but also in the international scene. Kamilla is a team owner of the Refuge Esports and formerly Filipino Bandits. She was also the managing director of the United Clan Leaders Alliance Philippines, an esports organization that brings together PUBG Mobile Clan Leaders and their teams, event managers, and streamers at the same time the community manager, and is at the same time the community manager for PUBG Mobile Esports in the Philippines. Don't forget to share this live and comment down below at the comment section if you have any questions for our guest speakers. They will be answered towards the end of the webinar. So can I ask, let's start with you, Kamilla, to introduce yourself. How did you start in the esports industry and how did you get in your current job?
Okay, so hi guys, it's me again. It's Kamilla Sumagui. So I'm the team owner, currently the team owner of the Refuge Esports, and also the admin for United Clan Leaders Alliance Philippines, which is the first PUBG Mobile bred organization in the country. So before I got into esports, my real job was actually to manage the National Federation for Cycling. So we handled the national teams. We focus on the journey going to the Olympics for cycling. And then while exploring PUBG Mobile, I was actually playing with the athletes that we manage for the team, and they introduced it to me. And then later on, I got interested in forming my own team, which is where I started with PH Bandits. So and then later on, one of my friends in college who was in an actual team herself, she introduced me to UCLA. And I think maybe it's like something that's innate with me that I do volunteer and community work since did grow up with that kind of family who does anything and everything to make things possible for the community. So there were a lot of problems that UCLA faced during that time. It was a struggle between moving up towards the international scene, but there were a lot of hindrances. And I think the lack of knowledge in marketing and business management was something that UCLA struggled with before. So I thought that maybe with what I have, the skill set that I have, I would be able to provide some help for UCLA, and of course I did use that for my team, but for UCLA, and then they did saw some I think some potential in me, and then I eventually got invited to become one of the admins for UCLA, and here we are now.
Awesome. So Eamon, can I ask you to introduce yourself? How did you start in the esports industry and how did you find yourself in your current job?
Well, hello everyone. My name is Ayman B. Arabain, and I am actually the current current marketing director for the Nadine Esports, where I actually founded it. And also, I'm also a streamer content creator at my own Facebook page, and also a caster for multiple international and local tournaments here in the Philippines and also in international. But I started in esports when I had the passion for gaming when I was young and really into gaming from PSP, then eventually having my own consoles like also PS1 and PS4. Then now turning into pandemic, we have the PC and mobile games. So I started in the esports industry because I was also invited to be an admin for my former clan, and with all the knowledge and principles and ideologies that I had during my college days, I applied it also in my former clan, and eventually now that having my own esports team and making them believe that trusting me on my skills, and I guess it is for them to believe that yeah, I am actually the right person for the job.
Cool. So now I know both of you actually are team owners. So when it comes to owning a team, what kind of qualities do you look for when you choose your players, and how do you find them? Where do you find them? We can start with you, Ivan.
Well, for the Najin Esports, um, we actually scout players based on their skills, and that's actually that is the most important thing. I think skills is actually the most thing that you have to consider, and then second is the passion that they had for the game, and also the achievements that they've been from their former team organizations as well. Yeah, I think that's basically it. The skills, passion, and their achievements.
And you, Camila?
All right, so maybe me and Ayman have a different take on the team management part, but I'm actually an admirer of him. I've been working with him for a few years, and I actually was the one who recommended him to be part of Yesports as well. So I'm so proud of how he has gone now. So for team management, so I did start quite early on. This is actually the Refuge is actually already my second team. So initially, just based on observation, just by esports being quite a new thing for mobile gaming, for mobile esports. The first thing that we did do prioritize is commitment, and being open. I'm not sure how I can translate it in English. Maybe comradeship, because if you don't get along with your team, I don't think it will be something that will lead you to uh, create a better connection with the rest of the people in your team. So we call it the clan. So that's the thing that we do prioritize. So the next thing would be the skills. Is something that I believe is something that we can a player can develop in time, because our team, what separates me and Iman's team is that their team is really focused on really professional esports, but ours is just more on the average level. But we did try to do that in my previous team when we tried to join the top level tournaments such as the PMCO. So there, that's my point.
Very interesting. So there are like loads of games out there, and in regards to mobile gaming, it's really booming and picking up, and there are a number of esports that are showing up even on mobile devices. So I wanted to ask why you guys specifically chose PUBG Mobile rather than something like League of Legends Mobile. We'll start with you, Camila.
Okay, there's two of us. We keep waiting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. Okay, so I think the initial reason why I chose PUBG Mobile over all the other games is that I do. I grew up with video games. Actually, I grew up with console games. So I started getting really attached to Call of Duty before it even became a mobile game. So I'm really into that. So it is like although it's a first-person game, and it's based on war and kind of violence, shooting, first-person shooting games. So that's the thing that kind of like relates to it. Actually, went into Mobile Legends first, and I tried that for maybe a few weeks, and I didn't get how it works. So eventually, when the athletes that I was playing with introduced it to me, they said, "Ma'am, I think you should try this game because it's fun and we get to play together." And then, yeah, I eventually got used to it.
So just to clarify, when you say athletes, you mean those cycling athletes? They're
Yeah, the
playing this
cycling
game.
athletes, because they were
Okay.
playing the game on their phones, and they're like, "Ma'am, you should download this. It's super easy. It's not yet 3 gig like what it is now."
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And yeah, and then yeah, Call of Duty. I didn't like the Ross, because of how the game was designed, but I preferred PUBG Mobile more also because of the graphics, because it seemed more realistic to people.
I see.
Yeah.
And Iman, I'll pass the
Well,
question over to you.
for me, Well, it's actually almost the same thing with Camilla for the PUBG Mobile, since it is actually really a fun game for for a lot of us, and that was actually my first mobile phone game, and really enjoyed it throughout. And eventually, through the PUBG Mobile, I eventually learned. I eventually knew some of uh, turned strangers into friends, and also being able to learn that there's actually more competitive side to it. But also, Najin Esports is actually a home for competitive athletes, and we just not only cater PUBG Mobile, but we also cater Valorant, in which we have two teams right now. They are actually competing on a lot of local and international tournaments as well.
Okay. Wow. So, for you guys, how do you market your teams, and what kind of like products do you offer as part of the brand of the team? We'll start with you, Iman.
How do I market my teams? For me, in order to market my teams, it has actually to be a storyline, for the Facebook page, for them to be able to qualify for the market on our Facebook page. It has to be a good storyline, coming out from the tournaments, also from the screens that they had, and I think that's the most good thing for the Najin Esports, being able to create a storyline for each individual and also for the team. And actually selling some of our basically we're selling our esports athletes to the market out there, not uh, by their skills, by their plays, and also um, a lot of marketing merchandise that they actually had to cover too.
So, like jerseys and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. And would you say that in terms
Uh,
of marketing,
yeah.
probably the best marketing you have, because I know you run a particularly competitive team, would you
Yeah.
say that the best sort of marketing is just winning?
Well, somehow for me, yes, yes, and that will be actually good thing to see. Winning is good, and winning is actually good for the team. Popularity will just be a bonus for them, because you will see a lot of people will support you once you win a major or won a major tournament event here, not just local but also international.
Mhm. And I'll pass the question over to you, Camila.
All right. So, being someone who actually works for the marketing industry, I see that there are a lot of ways that you can market your team, and I do agree with you that one of the things that can actually boost somebody is to when they win tournaments. But another way for the teams to be exposed is really to feature themselves and do social media the right way. What I mean to say is when you have a Facebook page, which is the platform that most of the esports teams use, mostly here in Asia and probably Instagram, is like the visual stuff that you present. So, and a lot of the audience is the part of them are all players. So when they see that there is something that they could achieve, that they could just follow these streamers and do whatever their idols are doing. It's already marketing itself. So the skills that they have, I agree with Iman. And then also, yeah, social media, I would really agree. Also, those live streams matter so much because a huge chunk of the esports industry is about the live streams and just creating those content every day. So yeah, and also those jerseys. Yeah, I agree as well. That those jerseys matter. But they're not being posted on social media, I don't think they'll ever get seen. So social media is still a major factor for me.
Hmm. So, what would you say? And we'll start with you this time, Camila. What would you say that your team's players do besides streaming and playing in tournaments?
I think more on if it's like more on the esports side. They're outside joining tournaments. You mean?
Yeah, like outside the, because what everybody thinks of when they think of pro gamers, that they think of sit at the computer, they practice, they play in tournaments, and sometimes they'll stream, right? But like, is there anything else to it as from
Yeah.
the perspective of a team owner?
I think from my perspective, since I'm a very observant kind of person. I think that outside of that constant activity of being in esports, they do try to play other games, or they do prioritize things like work and school. So most of the members of the community for esports now, like the generation now, is more of like people who still are in school. Yeah, that's why I think that's the other side to it. But I think more on, and since during the pandemic, there's really nothing else to do but play video games actually, or watch movies, or if they're really serious about it, they would actually watch gameplay of other streamers and professional players to get maybe what they could do next with their future bouts.
Okay, so what you're telling me, or what I'm hearing, is that most of the pro gamers in the Philippines are people who like have school or job on the side.
Yes,
Okay,
that's true.
so even in North America, I would say, just from my opinion, I would say that becoming a pro gamer, I mean, of course, it's not a mainstream career, but it's like borderline not even viable, because there's probably more senators in U.S. Congress than there are people having full-time, pro gamer jobs that are self-sustaining, and like you don't need to work on the side, you don't need to go to school, like you can just play. There's probably less than 100 people like that in the entirety of North America who are able to do that. So it's definitely not like mainstream or super viable here. But what would you say, could you see that becoming a thing in the Philippines, or is that a thing in the Philippines like right now? Are there people who don't have side hustles that just do the gaming?
Is it for me?
Both of you. Yes, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Sorry, I need to specify.
As you're waiting for the signal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so me being exposed to some of the organizational things, more on the government side, and I've also gotten to talk to the Federation for Esports in the Philippines. It actually has a lot of promise into it, especially with the pandemic, wherein people just cannot be anywhere but online. Like people would likely to go outside if they're really really bored, if they're not into esports, not into gaming. But but in terms of it becoming mainstream, I think it's still like at a baby stage, since in the Philippines they still prioritize basketball, and it's not a medal event that we although we're getting there somewhere, but it's still something that's embedded into the Filipinos. So
Yeah.
we're struggling in a way. It's easy to promote when you say celebrities are doing it, since we do have celebrity streamers who play esports games. But yeah, it would probably be the same as what you said with when it comes to America being there are more politicians than there are actual famous esports gamers. I agree with that as well in the Philippines.
And do you have an opinion on that, Iman?
Uh, yeah, almost same the answer, but there are some organizations here in the Philippines, or esports organizations here in the Philippines, who actually cater a lot of esports athletes and actually give them salary for them playing it. And I guess it is slowly becoming a evolution here in esports here in the Philippines.
So I just want to clarify for the audience that when I
Yeah.
said that there are so few, I specifically mean people who just like competitively game for the wins, for money.
Yeah,
In terms
sure.
of like streamers and content creators, there are like thousands, right? This is
Yeah.
totally viable. If you're an entertaining person and you're willing to put in the hours, and it is a lot of hours, it's tiring, then
Yeah,
then
exactly.
go for it. It's not easy to sit in front of a computer all day,
True.
especially if it's a mundane task. But some people
Yeah.
like watching that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
Anyways, next question I want to ask is we were just talking about salaries, and this ties in with our past broadcast that was with player contracts and with the potential dangers of them. Um, I don't have any sort of perspective on what goes on in the Filipino region, but would you
Yeah.
say that because in North America, sometimes unfortunately it doesn't happen. It's happening less and less as time goes on. But we have people who like sort of scam players. We say like,
Oh
"Oh,
yeah.
we're gonna like buy a team house and we're gonna like pay all our players," and then the team owner like 2 months pass and the players are like, "Where's my money?" And the team owner's like, "Just
Oh yeah.
wait," right? Do you guys have those sort of problems in the Filipino esports industry as well?
Yeah, well, we do, but somehow it's, I don't know how do I take on this. But there's a lot. There's a lot. There's a few. I could say, but somehow it's not something that we can actually meddle on it and eventually uh, give give a F on the on that part.
Oh, okay. And what do you think, Camila?
I do agree with Arman. There are a lot of underlying things that are going on with the PUBG, not just PUBG, actually the esports industry in general. Because, just esports, the game that is actually getting a lot of attention is more on PUBG Mobile, PUBG Mobile, Mobile Legends. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because there are a lot of people who stream this, especially celebrities. But when it comes to the management part, I think for our sport, there are a lot of things that these esports teams still have to wrap their heads around, especially when it comes to contracts and committing to specific things that support the teams. Because like I think Ayman and I would agree with this. There's still a lot of budget that needs to be talked about, and that's the number one thing
Exactly.
that the team owners actually worry about. Since we do have our um, main jobs in our real life, which supports our own needs, but when it comes to the needs of the team, there has to be someone who's actually more financially capable
True.
for that. So some of the teams that we have, such as like Blacklist Esports, Blacklist International, uh, I'm not sure. I think KHI Esports, they
Yeah.
have really generous sponsors. That's why they have the possibility of activating some of those possibilities. But if not, it's a also Beta Esports also having uh,
Exactly.
capability of doing that. But others, I think maybe 70% of the community is still struggling with that part.
Mm.
Oh,
I
okay.
agree. I agree.
Yeah, it can be difficult to find sort of a stable foothold in this industry.
Yes.
Um, so where do your players usually stream? With so many different platforms, what do you guys gravitate towards? Like
Well,
with yeah, we'll start with you, Iman.
actually, majority of my esports athletes don't do not stream. Maybe some of you, but I do really encourage them to actually create their own page for them to be able to market themselves whenever there's a good storyline for Najin Esports to offer. But when it comes to streaming, I don't think majority of my players are actually interested in it. But they do prefer on doing content creation, just like posting highlights of their tournament plays, and eventually also trying to post the full gameplay of their games. Yeah.
Is there a particular reason why they don't like to stream? Do they prefer not to stream?
Majority of my players are actually don't have a lot of resources for them to stream. Basically, um, laptop or PCs game capture, because it really, when it comes to streaming, it really requires a lot of money. It really requires a lot of money or a lot of budget for you to be able to stream, even though at the lowest budget streaming. I guess for them it's really not yet there, but soon enough, I'm sure whenever there's actually good heart for it, I think it's possible for them to stream every day.
I totally forgot about that. I remember when I was first playing and I had this like little laptop, and every time I stream, the internet
Yeah.
was like so bad and everything would lag so much, and my laptop would just turn into this lava brick because it was overheating.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
k-
I actually started as well using a very low low end MacBook, and then eventually from all of the talent fees and casting gigs that I had, I guess eventually I got a good equipment as well.
good. And you, Camila.
All right. So same with Iman. The athletes or the players that I manage under the refuge don't exactly stream because of again budget constraints. It it's a very taxing at the moment since Philippines is actually one of the slowest countries for ISP. So it's a huge struggle. Not just because Facebook is taking the live streams, expiring the links, but just even prior to that, uh, uh, what what is the primary problem is having the internet for it to be stable. So we don't know who to trust anymore, but another team that are actually providing some esports advice, their players, I think they're like rich kids, so they're able to provide for themselves. I think, but they're more on like streaming on their mobile phones. So they use like mobile platforms, or if they do have a PC that their parents were able to provide for them with the Elgato and all. They get some decent streams, but they're mostly on Facebook since our community watches more on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
but that's my answer.
so it sounds like it's actually quite difficult to stream in the Philippines. Is that accurate? Anybody can answer.
Well, somehow yes, but there's a lot of ways. You could see a lot of um, streamers out there who eventually try to stream facing. Actually, the phone is actually the setup is like the phone is actually facing a mirror, or the phone itself, and then
Oh, okay.
yeah. So that's how smart. That's how smart.
DIY.
Yeah, DIY. So yeah, I think that's basically it.
So that being said, the people who do end up streaming, do they get lots of viewers because there aren't that many streamers?
Well, yeah, yeah, I do believe it because they got a lot of viewers than me.
Oh yeah, actually, one of my good friends, is friends with her too. She used to stream Maju. Her her capital on streaming is just showing her hands playing on her phone, right? It was just
Yeah,
like a hand cam, like
yeah,
just showing her skills on her phone. It was epic. She was great.
yeah.
Nice. Okay, so what kind of social media do you guys use to promote your brands? We'll start with you, Camila.
I actually visited the live stream just to tell you guys, and Martin has a lot of questions. Maybe we'll do that later. And then okay, so for promotions, I did kind of mention touch on this earlier. I talked about using Facebook and Instagram. So Instagram, I think it's just getting into it slowly but surely, because I've been observing the marketing strategies that Big Etron uses, some of the big esports teams in Southeast Asia. They have a lot of support, like it's an immense type of support that their countries are giving them. It's like people just keep buying their merch as long as their favorite esports teams are wearing it. And at the same time, um, these teams get invited into the top tournaments for PUBG Mobile. So yeah, Facebook and Instagram, but more on Facebook since you kind of get into control of the ads, and the live streams are also based there. So the bulk of it is mostly on Facebook.
Okay. And how about you, Iman?
Well, for Nigeria Sports, we actually have various social media. It actually depends on what market are we targeting. For example, for the Facebook, we actually post our general marketing. when it comes to the tournaments and local screams. But we also use Instagram. We have actually two Instagrams. One Instagram is actually the collection of all the achievements that they had for the screens, just for actually an album, maybe a compilation. And our second Instagram account is where whatever we post on our Facebook account, we also post it on our Instagram. Then we also have a TikTok account wherein we post highlights of our players, and we are actually currently working on it, also on our YouTube channel as well.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. So a bit of a different approach here. One more
Yeah.
streamlined, the other a little more shotgun. So when it comes to presenting your brand, how about approaching sponsorships? How do you guys go about acquiring sponsorships? We'll start with you this time, Ivan.
Um, Sponsorships are actually hard to acquire here in the Philippines right now, since for you, in order to have a good sponsorship or a good relationship with the brands, you will be needing a lot of good support from, I mean, a lot of good support from other brands as well. But for our esports organization, we basically focus first on the investors itself and on how they really sponsor our esports athletes when it comes to the registration of the tournaments, also providing them the good device, also, and also the uh, jersey that they provide to our esports athletes. So basically, we had our good heart of an investor.
And you, Camila.
All right, so maybe I could touch more on this with the other team that I've been sharing some esports advice. So, uh, yeah, with marketing for esports teams in the Philippines, it is a struggle since not a lot of brands believe in esports teams. It's an awful truth that we kind of still have to face. So,
What do you mean they believe in the esports teams?
I mean, they don't see the value in it yet.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
maybe what I was trying to give the to like put together was like this thing that you could do, wherein you really focus on the strengths and the stories that your esports team provide, and maybe just try to be able to deliver that and give them as much exposure as possible. But yeah, it's still in the works. I think more on the other teams are able to. I think the other esports games are actually able to capitalize on that since it works for them, and yeah, gathering sponsors. I think just for me personally, the esports teams have to also try to grasp how to do the marketing and also the legal side of things, since the way you have to present yourselves to these brands is these brands think of their business first. They really want to know how they're going to make money out of supporting you. They're not interested really about just being mentioned, but they really know want to get a tangible result just from supporting a specific team. So yeah,
Okay.
more on business.
So it's very difficult to acquire sponsors, but just to get a more exact idea, you still do acquire some sponsors, yes?
Well,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So my next question is, so in my experience, for example, the GSL, the Global StarCraft 2 League, which is actually more like the Korean StarCraft 2 League because it happens in
Okay.
Korea and you have to be in Korea to play. Anyways, that tournament is run by a title sponsor called Hot Six, which is a Korean energy drink. Now, the GSL gets tens of thousands of international viewers, but the GSL and Korean organizations, even though they get lots of foreign views, they only seem to care about products and sponsorships that domestic people are going to be interested in purchasing. So, my next question is, in the Philippines, even if you guys are getting lots of international views, are the sponsors only really caring about domestic attention? We'll start with you, Camila.
I agree with that because I worked with a few brands and esports event organizers, and the last one we worked with was Mountain Dew, uh, which was actually already the principal sponsor for PMCO at the time. So that was, I think, last year. So they are very interested in getting their brand attention to a lot of players who play PUBG Mobile in the Philippines, since they did localize the support that they have for that specific esports gaming summit. So I believe that that is true, and most brands that are actually global tend to tend to look at that more. So some of the local brands that we have, they're interested in getting their name out there, but maybe some of their marketing managers are still in the works of finding out how they can truly get their names embedded into the esports community. So yeah, I agree that that's probably the case for most
Yeah.
corporate people.
And
Same as well.
and as people who are involved at at not only owning a team but in the more business side of esports, would you say that there is missed opportunity on that? Do you think there's value in brands, getting an international audience or caring about not just the domestic purchasing? We'll start with you, Iman.
It actually depends on how are the esports athletes going to represent the brand itself. Somehow here in the Philippines, maybe there's a lot of missed opportunities, but it really all depends on how the esports organization and the esports athletes influence the fellow players to purchase that brand actually. So it really depends on the representation.
Any thoughts on that, Camila?
Uh, so again, can I hear the question again? Sorry, I'm thinking about it.
Do you feel like there's a missed opportunity on brands not wanting or not caring so much about international attention and just focusing on domestic? Because there are a lot of international viewers.
I would, on a business perspective and a marketing perspective, that's a huge missed opportunity, but it also depends on how aggressive a specific company wants to go into that. And yeah, like for example, the previous brand that I was working with, they were really focused on. Oh, I worked for an esports event for, and then they were focused on getting known locally more on, because they're already they already have a good market abroad. So it depends. So maybe based on how they do targeting for their brand strategies, uh yeah, it's a missed opportunity if your brand is targeted to go global and you're targeting foreign communities, you're targeting investors to invest in your brand and maybe sell your products abroad. But if it's like a local brand that's just, kind of like within those limits still, it may not be something that's for them.
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So where do you see yourselves and the Filipino scene in 10 years? We'll start with you, Camila.
Okay, so where I see myself, that's a like a Miss Universe question. No, just kidding.
Never seen Miss Universe, wouldn't know.
No, I'm just kidding. So within 10 years, I actually envision esports being a platform that is accepted, because we do live in a very conservative country that still thinks gaming is a waste of time. So I'm really positive that eventually these esports organizations are able to recognize our esports and provide the proper footing for it. And there's a lot of steps that lead up to that. Especially one of the most important things would be being recognized by the International Olympic Committee. So I do pay a lot of attention to that, since we do already have an Olympic sport, which is cycling, but esports is still in the process of getting there, and there's a lot of internal struggle to it. But I see esports getting somewhere there, and eventually being consistently being hosted in the next SEA Games and the next SEA Games, and eventually some Asian continental level esports, so that we could all like organize and gather all the countries and then world championships for specific games that we have, especially for PUBG Mobile. Not just PMCO, because PMCO is I can say is like the the principal tournament for PUBG Mobile, but for it to be like a world championship is still right now an invitational level, right? I meant,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I can see esports going all the way there. You just have to tread the right paths and talk to the right people, and yeah. And if I see myself, hopefully I'm one of those people who get to still talk about where it started.
Uh-huh.
That's where I want to be.
So I want to ask you about one of the things you said. Just to clarify, did you want esports in the Olympic Games, or something like the equivalent, or actually in the Olympic Games, Kamilla?
Okay, so with the Olympic Games, this still being managed by a lot of conservative people. It actually took a long time before skateboarding and BMX freestyle or flatland, those extreme sports, got into being recognized as an Olympic sport. So for esports, there's still a lot of talk that needs to be done. How to actually manage the sport, because esports is it's gaming. It's based on technologies. So the thing that separates it from live sports is the way they regulate these games. So if there's like any possibility of cheating and hacking, that's still like a big factor for these things uh to be in a conversation. So if there's a possibility of people getting into that, but as long as these games are able to fight back and um, still create platforms that stop it from happening, I think it stands a very good chance as long as those things are being paid attention to.
Okay. And so I want to ask, there may be conservative people running it, but for example, like chess is not an Olympic sport. And I think that's, uh, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure why. It's, if I had to think off the top of my head, it's probably because there's not like a huge physical aspect to it, right? So do you feel like esports might fall into that category, or do you think the people who are in charge of chess just aren't pushing hard enough to get there to get into the Olympics?
Uh, from just my observation, I do know a few people who are athletes for chess, and then it's quite interesting that it is never there. But um, I think there needs to be more people fighting for it, because the conversation needs to be going, and the most of the sports that they do prioritize are those that are major. Yeah, like what you said. Being physically played in those different countries. So it's when it's available, like let's say basketball, which is the easiest answer. And there's a lot of countries, like more than 100 countries who play basketball. There's FIBA, there's an international federation for that, but there needs to be someone who gets the conversation going. And I think just from recognizing the triumphs of skateboarding and BMX freestyle, they really fought for that. They never wanted to recognize those extreme sports, but now it's something that people enjoy now, and it's more fun to watch the Olympics since there's like skateboarding and not just people on horses,
Uh-huh.
right? Yeah, so there's a lot of change, and the times are really going by fast. So just hopefully these esports organizations and international federations get into a sound um, harmony with each other.
Did you have an opinion on this, Simon?
Well, yeah, almost the same with Camilla, but when it comes to the question, where do we see ourselves in 10 years? Well, for Najin Esports, it actually depends on the how or the vision or the goals of the organization itself. But for us, we really wanted to be able to normalize that gaming is actually a stable. Gaming is actually could be actually a stable job for the Filipinos, and having it as that could actually sustain their family on it. So yeah, I think that's basically it for us, the esports organization.
Great. I really hope that happens. I hope it happens more here too.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll start this question with you, Iman. Do you have any tips for people who want to manage an esports team or be a content creator and how to better operate their brand?
Well, it really requires a lot of research for you to be able to manage a team, because it is not just actually the skills that you guys that you had before. You really need to research exactly on how to operate a good uh, organization itself, from marketing on how is it going to generate funds, how is it going to be able to dominate a lot of experience in argument, because an organization itself really has to have a goal on every on an everyday life, on a daily basis. It is not just actually having for this day we have then the same day. It has to be a different learning objectives for an everyday for an organization to operate daily basis. Yeah.
And how about you, Camila?
Sorry, can I hear the question again?
Sure. Any tips for people who want to manage their own esports team or be a content creator, or just how to better operate the brand?
Okay, so similar to how Ayman answered it, it requires observation, study, and a lot of like more adaptation to the current community. Because you know how when the community moves a certain way, you need to know how to get on it. Because if you're not gonna be joining those top tournaments or getting into those scrims that actually get you in a better place for your team, and for those organizers to be better at recording those achievements. Those are the things that really matter for managing an
Yeah.
esports team, and you really have to pay attention to how you can keep keep your players committed to that kind of goal. Because if they're not committed, they're not going to be able to. You're not even going to have proper content. So it matters who you're managing, how you're managing it, and where you want it to go. So I believe that those teams really have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So we have some audience questions. Let's see. Audience
There
question
are a
number
lot.
one. I will. I'll send this one to you first, Camila. What kinds of content should the players do on their social media? Selfies, gameplay videos? It's just as examples.
Okay. If with regards to relevance of content to esports, the audience, I feel like the audience is more inclined to know about how to learn and how to get better at your game. So usually when I go on YouTube, when you search for esports or just PUBG Mobile, the bulk of the people who are creating videos on how to get better get more views than those who are just creating content for themselves. So let's say Takas. He gets millions and millions of views just for playing really well, but he never talks about it. So that's another kind of content. But there are more views for those who videos and content that teach you how to be better at the gaming. But although those teams don't necessarily have to create content that are geared towards that if they really do not have any time, because these content creators, they're not from esports teams, right? So if you do want to get a lot of attention to that, you have to commit to creating content. But if you want to commit to becoming an esports player and create content, that's more on the streaming side, and maybe creating clips, and maybe hiring an editor, right, to
Yeah.
create highlights for you. That would make a lot of sense more, and being more targeted as a person who plays PUBG. Or yeah, it depends on how you want to go about it. If you just want to be someone that creates videos, or someone who wants to get famous for playing really well.
Mm.
How about you, Iman?
Well, actually, same as well with Camila on her take when it comes to the esports athletes. Esports athletes really tend to, I mean, really usually uploads their highlights and then their full gameplay on their games itself. And I think that could actually be a good content a lot of esports athletes. Well, also on her take that people try to try to watch tutorial videos. It is actually a good it's a good content as well. But for some pro players, I do believe that they really watch their idols on where do they on how really they play, on how they really communicate with their teammates. I think that's it for a lot of content creators here in the Philippines.
Gotcha. The next question is okay. This question is, if the players don't stream much, how are they supposed to get more exposure and attention for sponsors? Question over to you, Iman.
Well, for our organization, we really don't focus on getting a lot of sponsors, but there will be a time, or there will be a phase that sponsors will really approach you if they really want, if the brand really wants the organization itself to represent for them. So our target here is to focus on the skills of the esports athletes, not just providing them good sponsors. So basically, skills over sponsors.
Gotcha. And you, Kamilla.
Again, sorry.
The question is, if players don't stream much, how are they supposed to get more exposure and attention for sponsors?
Okay, so some sponsors vary with their goals. Some of them just want to get the influencer that's the funniest, not necessarily the best player out there, but they're the ones who get a lot of attention and the viewers just by being funny, by playing. And others do create capitalize on the skills. So I could say some of the players like let's say Alas, Vigor. Editen is actually a mix of both worlds. He's both funny, crazy, and he plays really well. So that's one of a big branding win for those who are actually getting him as a talent.
Those people always drive me crazy.
Yeah,
they like beat me. They beat me, and they have like a hand tied behind their back. They're like not even looking at their screen.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I really agree with that. But yeah, brands do vary in goals and how their brands want to be carried. So let's say, like maybe just a brand like a water brand, but they want an influencer or someone who creates content to be someone who's extremely healthy, right? And then
Okay.
if someone who just prioritizes stuff like that or just carries the brand better, or if they want to be really funny and they say that really hard selling like everything, like, oh, this earphones, you know what, this is the best thing in the world, you know, I can't hear anything else other than this earphones. It depends. They really vary.
I'm just curious, but very occasionally, very rarely, I should say, we have people who they get attention, but it's like maybe not the best kind of attention. Like
Yeah.
maybe they're like really angry people or something. But like they're still really good at the game. Now, I know two people in particular like this, and in both cases they did not have a happy ending. But do you guys have anybody like that in the Philippines where they're like a total jerk, but they're super good, but like the fans love them?
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a lot. There's a lot here in the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
I could say that just being Filipino means you're crazy. Because we have streamers, we have known streamers, I don't need to mention them. People already know who they are.
Yeah.
They're always angry. People make memes out of them walking out of specific tournaments, and they're still really good. And
Yeah.
when people actually encounter them in game, they're so happy to be able to eliminate that player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think our
exactly.
audience knows who these people are,
Yeah.
but you know, that's how they're famous for just
Yeah.
just being crazy.
There were two people from StarCraft that off the top of my head, that I can think of,
Ooh.
and one of them was fired, and then he quit,
Oh.
and then the other one, I forget if he was fired or if he quit, but his team made him go to a competition that he didn't want to go to, and then he had complaints about the soundproofing, and it was just really ugly. That guy's a jerk anyways. but yeah. Okay. Okay. How to attract more audience when I'm streaming? Let's start with you, Kamilla.
Attracting an audience while streaming. So I, from my friend, just referencing my friend who used to stream and had a lot of followers. The thing that attracts the attention of the players is when number one, when the streamers mention the people who are commenting and on the live
Oh,
stream, like it matters that the audience gets somehow
attention.
featured. Yeah, just like when people just ask for you to mention them, they're already so happy. They're just gonna be hanging around the stream.
Yeah.
But if you never mention them, they're just gonna go away as soon as they got in. So it's a struggle because sometimes even if some streamers who mention anyone and everyone doesn't necessarily work. But to some, if they are know how to converse with an audience,
Yeah.
or just try to make jokes or create conversations like, hey, how's it going, how are you today, oh, you welcome back to the stream, something like that, or they remember the followers that are top fans or visiting their streams. It matters a lot. Conversation matters a lot when it's a live stream, because
Exactly.
unlike recorded videos wherein these things are edited. So that's why people watch the live streams more, because they have a chance of getting mentioned in the live stream and they will be immortalized, like let's say on the
Yeah.
right. So like
I was here.
yeah, they'll screenshot and they'll clip it. Iman, oh my god, Iman mentioned me. Like,
Yeah.
this clip. And Iman actually a streamer apart from a team manager. So I know that when people just talk to Iman, they want to be as funny as heck. And if they want to get read, if you're not funny, I think you're just gonna get passed on. So yeah,
Yeah.
conversation with an audience is
Exactly.
important. Yeah.
Exactly. I do agree because whenever I go stream, a lot of viewers will really do get they just wanted to get a greeting from them. Well, some of my viewers are actually crazy. They like moan for me. Yeah, moan for me. Like what the hell? Yeah, and then eventually they'll give you stars. So yeah, I just do it. So a
Which
lot of
platform? Which platform do you use for streaming?
Facebook.
Okay, okay.
So you don't send me stars, okay?
Yeah.
But yeah, what matters the most is for you to get attention is a good conversation and a good entertaining stream, and being able to interact with them, playing with them is actually a good attention, good thing for some of us streamers, because at the end of the day, you really need to get their support, and playing with them is actually one of them.
Gosh, it's getting so dark here. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, that's better. Slowly turning into a vampire.
Oh,
All right. This is it seems like a specific question. But I suppose you guys would know. I'm just gonna read what I think they're trying to say. Is
okay,
it true
okay.
that more and more people are playing Free Fire now in the Philippines? I'll ask you first, Camila.
Um. Hmm. I wouldn't really say that. Maybe someone is trying to market it and like through word of mouth, like, oh, a lot of people are playing it, and then you'll be like curious because they said it. But I would say there's still like a huge chunk of people who play, those battle royale games and Mobile Legends. Like even if just walking through the street, there are more people playing Mobile Legends than, you know, just getting on a bus. There's people playing Mobile Legends, and PUBG Mobile is actually a specific community, since Mobile Legend is more available for people who have low end phones. It's actually you can play it there. PUBG Mobile is actually kind of more on the graphics side. That's why it
Yeah.
requires higher quality phones. So not sure with Free Fire. I see that with the numbers of downloads, maybe it is getting quite a bit of attention, but I'm not sure if they'll be able to keep it up. But just from observing the posts of some of the esports and organizations that I've previously worked with, I think they're looking into it maybe because the vendors usually talk to these or the brands actually talk to these vendors or events organizers or those organizers for esports in general, and they talk to them about how to market it. And usually, what they use is like a personal stance. So they talk about it because they had a good experience with it. So if these specific influencers have a good experience with it, eventually some of their followers are able to to be curious with it as well. It depends, but I feel like it's not really getting a lot of talk yet. Maybe if some famous streamers are like, "Oh, I wanted to try this," like Sausage Man.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard of Sausage Man. If you...
No, not yet.
He sounds funny already, though.
Okay, just talking about PUBG Mobile because it's similar to PUBG Mobile when it comes to gameplay, but it's so funny. I'm not sure about Free Fire. I've never tried Free Fire. I've heard of it, but when it comes to attention, I don't think it's getting that much attention yet.
Yeah.
But Sausage Man is.
Well, yeah, exactly, same.
Yeah.
Well, Free Fire is actually a good game, and for me as a caster, I really do have to really enter the community of Free Fire, and just basing it like I do have a lot of friends on Free Fire, and they're like, there's a lot of competitive, just like how I started on PUBG Mobile. There's a lot of competitive side on it. So yeah, you never know, but I might be a Free Fire person. I mean, player someday.
You know what?
Yeah,
I bet you the
lot of
person who asked this
tension.
question is somebody just trying to market Free Fire, trying to get us to talk about it.
Yeah, right? You know?
Oh, yeah, see, that's good marketing.
I'm just screwing around. Okay. One of the last questions. We're getting real close to the end here. Viewer says, "We love your positivity and ambition to create great teams. What advice do you have for those who are just starting to gain momentum in developing a large following and sponsorships and possibly don't know how to take it to the next level?" Can I ask for advice on how... Okay, I think that might be another question. Anyways, I'll start with you, Iman.
Well, if you're just a starting esports organization, uh, you have to take risks. You shouldn't be afraid of what if this specific brand rejects my idea. You really have to push beyond your limit for you to be able, because you never know. On that pushing beyond that limit could actually change an esports organization itself afterward, because just go for it, just like how we did. We go beyond our limitations and being able to acquire investors, sponsors, and eventually trying to get a lot of support from the community itself. So yeah, going beyond your limits, and not to be afraid, not to be afraid of trying to talk in with some sponsors and investors.
And your thoughts, Kamilla?
Yeah, I agree with Iman. You do have to take risks. You should be open to making mistakes, because sometimes when you do create content and people see it publicly, or when people get to watch you, it's not like reading a book where you can just be on your own and no one can talk about how you're not reading the book right? But when you're playing, people know you're playing, and if they watch you and you fail, that shouldn't be something that stops you from going further, because sometimes the biggest failures lead you to the biggest wins. So you just have to learn to get up from there, and not just being like a motherhood statement, because usually that's like a when you fall you have to get up there. But I can see that there are people who struggle a lot with anxiety because of trying to get approval from a public audience instead of just enjoying the process. So that's a big struggle that most content creators, not just for gaming, struggle with. But I believe that they can overcome that if they just focus on the craft, just be open to making mistakes, and just keep going. They can't stop just because someone tells them that their layout isn't as well as this famous esports team. So they just have to be in a constant journey of improving themselves.
Yes.
They can't just shortchange themselves just for not. Okay, my KD ratio is really bad, but I know that I can make it into a 4 eventually. Just have to keep fighting for it. You have to commit.
Yeah.
You have to commit to improving.
And the last question, we spent a lot of time talking about this already, but I want to give the
Yes.
viewer the question the attention it deserves. So the question here is, can I ask for advice on how to find sponsors, or investors for a brand, or how can you get attention from them? I'll start with you, Kamilla.
Okay, so wait, I saw that question earlier. Can I ask for advice on how to find sponsors? Yeah. Okay, so my family has a law background, so that's why contracts aren't so difficult as most teams struggle with. But I can, if any of you guys need contracts, I can also help with that. Although I'm not yet a lawyer, but we do have an office. And how to get sponsors? It's more about being more. You have more knowledge about the specific sponsor that you're aiming for, because it feels better that someone knows you more than you know them when you're trying to approach them instead of you're trying to guess. Like Mountain Dew, what is that, a soda or isn't that a juice drink? When you say that, you already turn off the conversation. So the more you know about the specific brand, and the more you know how to relate the brand with your own branding, like you're just connecting the dots with that. I think you'll get more attention to that. So, and I think it's not more on about being specifically related. Like let's say Razer's like a equipment brand, right? For gaming and headsets, but sometimes the biggest brands are not exactly in those brands, like not necessarily on those who sell keyboards and monitors. Sometimes there's like this basketball team. I keep mentioning basketball because there's a lot of good marketing strategies from basketball. Our national team is actually sponsored by Chooks to Go, which is a roasted chicken brand. So there's absolutely no relation to basketball, but they say it's the manok ng bayan, or the national chicken.
National chicken.
When they call you the national chicken, you're already related to that brand, and that's like the most genius thing, right? So just knowing how to relate the brand you're approaching, and I think you'll get into a good conversation. And also another thing that matters is researching on how to market yourself better. So that matters a lot, since sometimes when you don't know how to put up with a good conversation with someone with a business, they might not eventually continue talking to you because they're not going to get any business out of it.
Yeah.
So you really have to pay attention to that too.
Well, yeah, I agree with Camilla on her take. Well, for you really have to be actually real when it comes to represent on how you represent yourself for you to be able to get attention from the sponsors itself. For example, our esports organization, Najin Esports, we have a good sponsor when it comes to the merchandise, and that's that's a good marketing because a good merchandise factory here could market themselves from our organization and telling that, oh, we produce for this kind of organization, so you guys also should produce from us. So that's actually a good partnership partnership between the two teams, so at the two organizations or the business itself. So I guess being real and at the same time being able to target what audience are you going to focus on is a good way for you to be able to acquire good sponsors.
Okay. Well, I guess we've gotten to the end of the webinar. Before we end, I just want to say, Camilla, your backdrop has like this guy. He's got like a bullet that just went past his head. And you can see blood, and like on his face, you can't see like his eyes, but on his mouth, he's just like smiling. He's like, "Oh, I just got shot. This is great." He's like having the time of his life. So every time you're talking, and it goes into speaker view, he's just there, and he's just like, like there's you, and then there's the guy who's like having an amazing time getting his head blown off. So
Yeah.
I just had to bring it up.
That's awesome.
It's cute.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching today's webinar, and we hope everybody enjoyed. Thank you again, Eamon and Kamilla, for sharing with us so much with your experience about esports marketing strategies. We're so proud to see recognition rising in the esports scene globally, and look forward to collaborating with you soon. Stay safe and stay tuned.
Yay.
Okay, cut. Thank you.